Well, welcome to our virtual expert series focusing on women role models in agricultural leadership, education, and communications. Today we have Kathleen Kelsey, who is a professor at Oklahoma State University, to share her experiences. Kathleen?
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with your group today. I want to talk a little bit about my background, and then I've got some tips for assistant professors who are seeking promotion and tenure. And then I have some tips for associate professors who are seeking to get promoted to professor. And finally, I want to address the topic of gender in the workplace. And these tips are based on some research that I've done in addition to my own personal experiences. I am a program evaluator, and I have come to the field with a Ph.D. from Cornell University in 1999. I came to Oklahoma State University, and I've been here ever since. And so I serve as an internal and an external evaluator on projects, namely federally funded projects that require evaluation. And I also work locally with the College of Agriculture and the natural scientists who offer educational programs, and I help them understand program evaluation and how it can help improve their educational efforts. So most of my scholarship has focused on new models for conducting evaluation in an agricultural context. I'm also very passionate about distance learning, and I've done some research on gender and how female ag teachers are experiencing that role in the state of Oklahoma. I'm also working in distance learning, and I teach several graduate level courses online, and I manage our Master of Agriculture and our Master of Science online degree programs for the department. That's just a little bit about my background. So I came to Oklahoma in 1999, and I went up for early tenure in 2005. So that was about 5 years in service. And some of my secrets or tips for earning early tenure and promotion were mostly learning the values and norms of the culture of academia. Every institution has a unique culture. It's interesting because the field of ethnography now has moved away from studying indigenous cultures to studying organizational cultures. And so that helps me think about there's no different for me studying or living or working in Bolivia as the same as working in academia. It's country unto itself, and it has its own norms and its own expectations for behavior. And so it's very important that we all recognize that culture and try to figure it out as quickly as possible. So one way to do that is to serve on committees. And committees are private meetings with high-level people, well-respected people in the university, and they do a lot of think aloud during the committees. And you can also ask questions about the culture, like what's normal here, what's expected here, would that be considered okay here? And so kind of you get away with being able to ask a lot of those innocent type questions when you're early in your career, and people are more than happy to tell you and mentor you. And that'll give you a really good idea about your context and the expectations within your context. So I always enjoyed serving on those committees early in my career. Of course, later in my career, it's not so fun. I'd rather be working with grad students. But okay, so another very obvious point that I want to make is get your expectations narrowed down. And I understand that at Texas A&M University, your new department head has been very explicit and specific about what's expected from faculty. But I think that's the exception. I think most departments like to keep a little fuzzy math on the table. And I'm not sure if that's to politically hedge at some point or to make room for personality on some point. But as much as you can, the people that you should be talking to you about expectations are your department head and the people that are on your promotion and tenure committee. And so at Oklahoma State, we instituted a fairly new policy where we're supposed to meet annually. The promotion and tenure committee are supposed to meet annually with people who are going through the process and review their dossier and talk to them about how we feel they're doing. And so they get feedback annually. And this is informal. There's no letter written by this group. It's more of a feedback. Okay, so there's basically three things: teaching, service, and research. And each one can be quantified Each one can be measured. So it's a numbers game. I like to make a joke that administrators can't read, but they can count. And I even number everything on my resume. I have my heading, peer reviewed journal articles, and I number it. And I put the summary at the top. And even if my number's wrong, I know that in my letters, the number that I put there at the top is the one that shows up. So make it very easy for your administrators to see clearly what you have produced. So how much is expected? How many peer-reviewed journal articles per year? How many conference proceedings per year? One time I asked my boss, Dr. Leising, what do posters count for? How many posters equals one peer-reviewed journal article? And he said, none. You'll never get any credit for doing posters. So instantly I stopped doing posters. It's kind of sad, but true. If I'm not going to get any credit or recognition whatsoever for doing a poster, and posters do take a good amount of time to do, then that's something that you should deprioritize. Okay, so how many grant dollars are expected? That's a hard one. That's a hard one to get anyone to nail down on because they'll just say a lot. And really, I've never heard a department give a number, but secretly they do have a number in their head of what they want. And what they really want are the fully funded, fully allowable costed grants that have the complete indirect cost. Do you call it IDC or F&A? Okay. So I used to apply for grants from organizations that didn't have fully allowable costs, and those were not quite as exciting for my administrators as the federal grants. So I learned that too, kind of, by learning the culture. So I just passed that tip on to you now to really look at the whole package of the grant that you're applying for and really focus your attention on those that do have the full allowable costs associated with them. Service is always a problem for us because it takes time and many times there's not a reward. And I also find a lot of irony in the service department because service to me means like helping your community, helping people in need. But in academia, it means serving on a committee, which to me doesn't help anybody. It doesn't reduce suffering, okay? And I'm a very values-driven person, and I think that we should all be reducing human suffering. So I would get clear on that. What kind of service? One of my colleagues volunteers for the program, a CASA program, which is for helping children in the court system. Does that count as service? Does that count the same as serving on a promotion and tenure committee, for example? So get clear on what will count as service and follow your passions. Because you can really, I have another colleague I just talked to recently, and she's serving on 7 university level committees. So I'm guessing she's spending 7 or 10 hours a week doing this service, which is an entire day, and she's not doing her research, in other words. She's spending a lot of time in meetings and doing things for these committees, but she's not getting her research done. And I don't know how to encourage her to say no, but I did. But it's something that she has to feel comfortable with, saying no to people who ask her. Okay, so which is most valid out of all these activities that we do as academics? Which ones are valued most highly? And in my experience, it's the grants, number 1, and number 2 are peer-reviewed journal articles. Now, these two work in synergy. When you get a grant, you have an opportunity to collect data and write papers. And so those two I see as complementary and synergistic. One naturally comes out of the other. The more grants you get, the more papers you write. That leads to a positive flow of getting more grants. And so I would say that if you had to think about your time every day, would be focusing on the grant seeking, which will naturally lead to publications, and it will also naturally lead to your ability to recruit high quality graduate students as your assistants, because the grant is obviously to pay people to do something. So that getting a grant early in your career, hiring a grad student doubles your power. Now it's not just you working towards those goals. You're hiring, I call it the pyramid scheme. Okay, you've got a pyramid scheme. You want to build your downstream. I believe they call that downstream. You want to build your downstream. The more grants you get, the more people you can hire under you and mentor them, and they come up through the ranks and they can begin working on grants and they can build their downstream. And maybe 10, 15 years into your career, you're actually getting close to the top of the pyramid. And I was thinking about this the other day, about my pyramid, and it feels pretty good. I've got people that I'm working with that I love. I love them dearly, and we're all productive and we're all focused on our shared vision, our shared mission. And it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing to have accomplished after 13 years in the business. So think about your downstream. Think about your pyramid. You start your pyramid by getting a grant. That's the beginning of the pyramid scheme. Next thing, you get your pubs, you hire grad students, you just keep that good energy flowing and flowing. Okay, my other point, do you remember the movie Jerry Maguire? Well, everybody always remembers one line, show me the money, show me the money. But that's not what I remember about the movie. What I remember was a very passionate young man who had an ideal, and he risked everything to live his ideal. And he wrote his manifesto and distributed it to his colleagues, and he was completely rejected. But he stuck to his guns, and it cost him dearly. He only had one client, but he worked, and he worked hard, and he made it happen, and he lived the quality of life that he valued. And that's something I think we cannot forget, that you eat to live or live to eat. Do you work to live, or you live to work? And I think most of us work to live. And this job we don't punch a time clock. It can eat us alive if we let it. We can work 24/7. And how many of you sleep with your BlackBerry or your iPhone? I stopped doing that. I realized that was probably unhealthy. But you put it on the pillow next to you, and the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is check your emails to see what's ahead of you for the day. Do you do that? No? Well, I know I'm recovering. So now I put it in the laundry room, turn it off, and just try to think about overcommitting. My point is that if you're overcommitted and you're stressed out, you're not a good colleague. You're not helping yourself, and you're not helping your colleagues, because you're not fully creative. The brain and the body need 8 hours of sleep a night. Needs good nutrition, it needs rest, and you need downtime. And we talk about being mindful in today's society, and mindfulness is a big idea that is emerging and coming from the Buddhist traditions of meditation. And so the research is showing us that Buddhists have volunteered for some studies, and they're showing us that the brain in a meditative state is very enriched and engorged with blood, and is becoming oxygenated, and that's where your creativity starts coming and emerging from. When your brain is at rest, when it's fully rested and empty of chatter. And so think about that. We fill up our days and nights with chatter. We're not being creative. And this is a creative profession. So if for no other reason, you should get your rest and take care of yourself and only work, try to limit yourself to 8 or 9 hours a day, so that your brain can rest and you can increase your productivity. You actually the less you work to a certain point, you got to work maybe 6 to 8 hours a day to be creative. When you start working 9 and 10 and 11, you're losing productivity because you're tired, exhausted, and you're losing your ability to be focused, efficient, and creative. So that's my Jerry Maguire story. Okay, another lesson that was hard for me to learn, and I probably still haven't learned it, is to be politically correct, that nothing is private. Assume that what you share in confidence will eventually be broadcast. You can test that out by starting a false rumor and seeing how long it comes back to you. That won't be long. We in Ag Ed, we have a very, very tight grapevine. I say that don't make alliances, because if you make an alliance, you actually may be voted off the island. So I'd like to say to stay calmly neutral in matters as much as possible. Try not to get involved in the drama of alliances in your workplace. It's exciting and it's fun, but you may, and I've been around long enough to see the cool kids actually become the out kids and vice versa. I've seen the out kids become the cool kids. And so I've kind of stepped back from all of that drama and political activity, and I just try to stay on my own island by myself. I'm not going to vote myself off. Okay, another tip is to follow your passions, and that seems obvious, but we are hired to do a job, and we have a job description. And hopefully that you're lucky enough that your job description did match your passions, and to stay true to that, because that will help keep you motivated when you need to be motivated throughout your career if you're doing something that you do feel passionate about. I've been in evaluation for 15 years. I've taught this class, 15 or 20 times, and I just gave a lesson right before this hour, and I was getting passionate and excited about it. I said, wow, I'm pretty blessed that after all this time, I still believe in my organization, and I still believe in the values and the cause of evaluation. So time management, everyone suffers from time management, and we say we don't have time, but really we all have 24 hours in a day. We all do. We all have the exact same amount of time, and it's a matter of what we choose to do and spend that time. I personally choose to spend 8 hours a day sleeping, a few hours a day eating and taking care of my personal needs, and a few hours a day communicating with friends and family and doing that sort of thing. And then, 6, 8, 9 hours a day working, depending. Some days I work 6, some days I work 9. Balances out at the end of the week. But you also have to think about carving out, I'm going to say, a day where you do not come to the office if the office is a very distracting place for you. Or if you like your office, close the door and do not invite visitors. Because you need time to think. Like I said, this is a creative job. And if we don't have time to think, we don't have time to be creative, and we don't have time to invent new research ideas and new strategies for solving social problems. Okay? So you may think that it's a luxury. I can't possibly afford to just sit around and think for a day. I don't have time for that. And I would argue that you don't have time not to do it, because this is where we get paid what we get paid by society, because we are creative, we are smart, we are the problem solvers, we create new knowledge. Okay? You got to buy into that belief system that as professors, as the professoriate, the intellectuals of our time, of our society, we have a responsibility to create and solve problems. And if we're so buried with busyness and distraction and drama, we are doing a disservice to society. So that's my philosophy on time management. It's a higher calling. It's a higher calling what we do, what we've chosen to do. It's a spiritual journey for us. We could work at Walmart just the same, but, that could be a spiritual journey for some people. But we've chosen this road, and this road gives us freedom. And with that freedom comes the responsibility of actually creating new knowledge. Okay. So another tip is to join winning teams. And I call these my ruthless tips because alongside a spiritual journey is also accountability. And we must be accountable for our time. And only winning teams are worth your time. So if you get the inkling that you're on a losing team, I'm going to encourage you to cut your losses and don't stick it out to the bitter end, because it won't help you. But winning teams lead to further winning teams, and we know who they are. We know who our colleagues are that are winning grants, that are getting publications, that are productive. So pay your dues and get involved with those people. Offer to do a lit review for them for their next proposal. Offer to do anything at all for them to become a part of their team, and pay your dues and become a part of the winning teams. Okay, now you've already made associate professor, you've been serving in that role for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and you'd like to advance to professor. What we like to see at that level is more publications, more grants, more courses taught, more students mentored. If you've got the numbers, they can't deny you. Bottom line, you've got to have the numbers, okay? So figure out what those numbers are and get them, and let your work speak for itself. Another criteria is an international reputation. And I've been working with Fulbright on the Senior Scholar Program, and I have a lifetime limit of 2 trips, and I've taken both of mine. I went to Kenya, Africa, and Thailand for a month each, and it was a wonderful experience, and I've provided the link to that in my handout. Okay, another is awards for excellence, and I know that TAMU has an awards committee. I think Dr. Dooley started that, if I'm not mistaken. That's a beautiful gift, and I recommend that for all departments, to have an awards committee to nominate and fill out those applications and make those awards happen. They're good for your department. They show that your department is movers and shakers. They're good for the individual as well when you go up for promotion. I also like to recommend that you become a master mentor to graduate students and junior faculty to help the next generation get, you've got your goodies. When you're a professor, you've got your goodies. So give the handout and the leg up to the next generation, and seek out mentees at all stages to help them get to the next step. And to me, at my age and stage of life, this is where my nourishment comes from, is seeing the next generation blossoming and growing and learning. And so that's the reward. I don't need another publication, but ironically, they come. When you're mentoring young people, they're motivated, and you become second author or third author because you are helping them with the intellectual work of that paper. But you're letting them drive it. You're letting them learn the process. You're letting them take the lead. And so it's about letting go of control now and guiding and showing the next generation. And to me, that's the beautiful part of getting older. I say we trade youth and beauty for wisdom and knowledge. So that's the cost of the wrinkles. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is gender. And gender, right now, Oklahoma is considering repealing affirmative action. California repealed affirmative action in 2006, and I think Michigan did as well. California right now is going to go back on the ballot and repeal more of this type of thing. And so the movement is to pretend that gender and race and class does not matter, but I still believe that it does. I spent many years of my career denying that gender mattered because I didn't want to believe it. But women and men are biologically and sociologically different. And so I think it's good that we honor the difference and we learn. We take the time. There's a book called Women's Ways of Knowing. It's a classic book about women's ways of knowing. And I recommend, if women want to dwell more into this, they could read that book. Women are disadvantaged because men are in charge, especially in the College of Agriculture. So we are a minority still, and we are disadvantaged. Every minority is disadvantaged. A man in the Family and Consumer Science College is disadvantaged because he's a minority, and he has to figure out how to act in a room full of women. So try to understand the differences and play to your strengths. Whatever your strengths are as a woman that you can use, but first you have to understand what they are. And I talk about or I've written here, find and embrace your superpower as a woman. So I don't want to use stereotypes, but I'm very intuitive and I'm very nurturing. And so I'm going to play to that strength. And I'm going to love the heck out of my students, and I'm going to love the heck out of my colleagues, whoever will allow me to. All right. So that's one thing that's gendered and stereotypical, but I'm embracing that. Another thing is learning how to communicate with men, and this I learned the hard way too. I would ruminate. Women they talk in first drafts. Like they have an idea and they want to talk about it. They don't polish it. They don't perfect it. They just want to kind of throw it out there and start talking about their problems. And men are problem solvers, and they're direct and they're linear. And when women are ruminating and talking all over the place, and men are just wanting to get to the point and solve your problem right now. So if you go to your department head who happens to be a man and you start ruminating with him, he's going to offer you a solution. And you're going to reject it because you didn't want a solution. And you're both going to be dissatisfied with your communication. So think about what you really want before you make an appointment or go sit down with your department head, and be clear and direct, and be clear on what you want before you go in and talk to him. And then ask for what you want. Don't ruminate. Ruminate with your girlfriends over lunch. Do not ruminate with your department head or men in powerful positions around you. So that's just one small tip, is to try to figure out how we communicate differently and what we both want from communications. Okay, the gender card, we don't want to play that. Men don't really care, and they don't want to hear about it. They don't want to hear how you're disadvantaged. So you have to find support for that reality with your women friends or with people outside the workplace. And I do recommend striving to mentor both men and women. You don't want to be pegged as only mentoring women. You don't want to be pegged as anything. You want to be pegged as an excellent colleague. That's all. You know what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? So be careful and don't get pegged as only serving women or only caring about women's issues. Just try to be balanced and fair and an excellent colleague overall. And if you have experienced gender discrimination, there are many systems in place now to deal with that, and recommend that you use those systems and seek the support that you need to solve the problems within your context. So do you have any questions?
One thing I wanted to share that you had shared earlier had to do with voice lessons. Can you share a little bit about that topic? Because I think that was an interesting topic that you brought up.
Yes, my voice, I have modified my own voice over the years just based on the reaction I was getting from other people, and I have lowered my tone 1 or 2 notches, maybe 2 or 3 notches. And Margaret Thatcher, when she started her career, she was almost kicked out of the House of Lords because she had a shrill voice. They couldn't stand listening to her. But obviously she rose to the top of her profession and did very well. If you listen to Hillary Clinton, her voice is measured and paced and deep, and I'm pretty sure she's done extensive voice work as well. I haven't gone back and listened to some of her very earliest speeches, but just listening to her today, I know she's done a lot of work on her speaking. So women are discounted. I told you earlier that we are disadvantaged. One of the reasons we're disadvantaged is because we're seen as weak and powerless, and our voice gives us away. Our voice is weak and powerless. We have high-pitched voice, which is associated with weakness and babies, right? It's just biology. So control your voice, measure your speech, speak in a more authoritative and deeper tone. And then you might say to yourself, I don't want to be a man. Why are you telling me to make my voice manly or masculine? I don't have a good answer for you. All I can say is, what do you want? And at the end of the day, is what is your voice getting you what you want?
Great. Thank you. Another thing, Kathleen, that I wanted to bring out, and you shared it so eloquently, had to do with what is going to make you slow down. And you were speaking to those life-changing events. Can you speak to that just briefly?
Okay. In adult ed, we have a theory called transformational learning. It's very popular, and the thing that triggers transformational learning is a disorienting dilemma. And a disorienting dilemma in adulthood will set you on a course to change your behavior, your attitudes, your knowledge. For most of us, it's a health crisis. For most of us that are high-powered women and men, hard-driving, high-achieving, we put in 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. When we're on vacation, we're checking our Blackberries. All of these things building up stress, cortisol, hormones in our bodies and deteriorating our bodies. These stress hormones are, in fact, toxic chemicals, and they deteriorate our arteries and lead to heart disease and cancer and stroke. That's been proven. So what's your disorienting dilemma going to be? Are you going to wait until you get cancer? Are you going to wait until you get diabetic, become a diabetic? Are you going to wait until you have your first heart attack before you decide to make the change? And so the research, tons of research on the correlation and even cause and effect between the choices that we make and the results that we get biologically. So I just want to encourage everyone to not wait for your disorienting dilemma, although studies show that you will, and to really think about, again, are we living to work or working to live? And finding that balance in yourself and your journey in this life.
And the last question I have is really, or clarification, is a follow-up. One of the things that came out during our live meeting had to do with how to say no.
Mm-hmm.
And so what strategies do you have to say no?
Okay. Well, there is a price to be paid for saying no. There's a very big price. And I had a letter on my desk from somebody at the university inviting me to participate in a committee. And I don't feel that I want to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel my service is better spent in other ways. And so I sat on that for a week. What should I do? What should I do? Should I say no? Should I do it? Who sent the letter? Why me? And I came to the conclusion that I don't want to serve on the committee. It's not part of my authentic self. It's not meaningful to me. And so I went ahead and RSVP'd with a no this week. And I know that there's a price for saying no. But I also know that my spiritual journey is worth more than sitting on that committee for 20 or 30 hours. I could give that same 20 or 30 hours to my mentees. And on the same week, I also volunteered. I'm volunteering for a women's program to match female faculty with female students. So I spent time there meeting with my mentee and participating in that program. I also volunteered to speak at a church about mindfulness for 4 or 5 hours. So I'm saying no to what's not nurturing me, and I'm saying yes to what is nurturing me. And that's the key. That's the key. And be clear on what nurtures you. And when you're dead, what do you want people to write about you in your obituary? Have you ever done that? And I don't think anybody's going to stand up at our funerals and say, oh, Kathleen was so wonderful. She served on 37 university level committees and published 200 journal articles and presented 32 conference papers. No, that's not what they're going to talk about. So I think we just have to remember that we're all mortal. We only have so many days on this planet. And what do we want to do with them? And how do we want to find nourishment every single day?
Thank you very much. In fact, I found lots of different tidbits in your sharing that are very applicable. So thank you very much, and thank you for serving as one of our virtual experts.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an honor, and good luck with the rest of your program.
Thank you.